Welcome back, guys. Now, I've talked about the JAMMA 6-in-1 switchers a couple times before, and I'm sure some of you realize that I have this in one of my arcade machines, two of them in fact. That one's kind of a mess, and when I put that in initially, I didn't even have my channel yet. So I thought maybe this time, especially since I'm doing some things a little bit differently, I would kind of take you guys with me, show you how I'm doing everything, how I'm going to set things up, and whatnot. So the first thing is this is obviously the switcher here. You've got your 6 slots here. Now with your smaller boards, like for instance this iCade 16-1 board, this is very small, so there's no problem just plugging these directly in. So you just plug it in like that. Now do make sure when you're plugging these boards in to kind of brace underneath, because you see there's no support in the center of this board. That's one of my complaints about the 6-in-1 switchers, is there's no support really right in the middle, so it is easy to break the actual PCB itself. Alright, and this also will handle sort of a medium-sized board. We have this one from Cave here. This is, if it focuses, Espgaluta 2. So we can put that in there. Again, just try to support the sides a little bit, and that fits just fine. We have sort of one of our older, sort of more standard size PCBs here, and this will also fit. This is Gunbird, so you can put Gunbird in there just fine. Once again, okay. So we've got that one in there, and that one sits actually pretty well. I would not recommend putting one any bigger than this. And I've got two other boards in particular I'm going to put into this one for my vertical monitor that aren't going to work in the 6-in-1 switcher. The first one is Shenryu, which is on the Sega STV. Now, first of all, obviously with the cartridge in there, I guess you could put it in the first slot, but it's going to be kind of oddly balanced. It's also much heavier than the other boards, and I would be afraid that either the board or more likely the 6-in-1 connection would probably break off at some point. So definitely wouldn't recommend putting that in there like that. The other one that would be a serious problem, I'm not even sure if I can get the whole thing in a shot, is this board here. This is Sky Shark. Maybe I can get that on there. There we go. Sky Shark, the great Toaplan game. And again, this one is just really, it's just too big, too heavy. It's not going to sit in there. It's not, just a really bad idea. So what you can get to help yourself out are these JAMMA extender harnesses. This one I got from Twisted Quarter. Now there is something that's important to know about these. Sometimes you can get them like this. These are sort of cheap ones. They come out of China, and you can tell they're not really put together all that well. The gauge of the wire is really thin, and for most of the signals it's not a big problem, but there are a few problems that you run into with these. Sometimes you plug it in, works fine. Most of the time it does not. And the problems that you run into, the first one is right here. You see this is your ground and your plus 5 and plus 12. May have had that backwards, but anyway. So that gives the power to your boards, and it looks at first glance like these are thicker wires than the rest, which you would want it to be to get lots of current. But if you take a really close look there, you can see that the wires themselves are actually the same thickness as the others. They're that thick, sort of, it's probably a 22 gauge wire, and it's just not thick enough to carry the signal through. And the boards that I've had the biggest problems with these are the CPS2 boards. They seem to be really finicky about the power supply getting to them. So if you use these with a CPS2, which of course you'd have to if you're using one of these switchers, you definitely want to sort of juice that up a little bit. And what I did, here's sort of a finished product. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I actually took 16 gauge speaker wire, and I put it on here. I actually put it on both sides instead of just one. And you can see I've got it on the other side with the heat shrink, so everything's nice and insulated. But this seems to work just fine for the CPS2 board. So, and those are by far the most finicky ones in terms of power. So my recommendation, just get some 16 gauge speaker wire. It doesn't necessarily have to be brown. That's just what I found. And yeah, and just replace those, and that should be fine. The other thing that I want to point out, or two things actually. The first one is you'll see number 14 here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's nothing on that one, and that's actually supposed to be the video ground. So there's no video ground on these. Now if you do buy them from JAMMAboards.com, they will do the video ground for you. They'll run one. If not, you're going to have to run one yourself, and it's pretty easy. You just run it from number 14 over there to number 14 over here. Not a big deal. So, and honestly, I usually use, just one of my sacrificed wires from the power to do that. Now the other thing you're going to want to do is usually the first two and the last two on either end are grounds. So you definitely want those grounds to all be unified. So again, if you buy it from JAMMA boards, they'll jump those on this end just to make sure that everything's unified. If you're doing it, I found that it's easier to do on this side. And again, not the prettiest looking thing in the world because I've got too many wires on each one, but yeah, I just jump the wire from one side to the other, so all your grounds are unified. Shouldn't be a big deal. So if you do that, then you can connect to any of your other boards, and it should be no problem. But do be warned, a lot of people think that the 6-in-1 switchers are not working, but it's usually your extender harnesses that are the problem. Now the other thing to note too, if you're using one of these, you can see this is just a nice solid fingerboard here, and most of your JAMMA boards are going to have this little key slot there, and if you look closely on here, you can see there's actually a plug in there. So if you try to plug one of these just flat fingerboards in, it's not going to work. So what you need to do is just get some needle nose pliers, and you can just pull that guy right out of there. So that is that. Now the other thing that is a problem for me especially is these things come with a remote, which sounds pretty cool. You can just choose game 1 through 6 and it'll turn that one on, and you're good to go. Now the problem that I have is I've got 2 of these already in my other machine. So in that case, if both machines are on, say I've got friends over and we're playing games, whatever slot one machine's on, they both have to be on, because unfortunately you can't adjust these remotes. There's only one signal. There aren't like multiple channels or anything. So if you press 2, all of them are going to switch over to 2. So that's kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm getting rid of this remote. And the first thing, I'll just sort of give you a rundown here of how you do that, and then I'll show you some of the steps in a little bit more detail. But the first thing that you have to do is you got to take this guy out right here. Now this is the IC that controls the remote. It captures the signal and tells it which one to switch to, and it's really easy to get off of there from what I'm told. I'll see how it works out, but all you have to do is desolder this side here, and you should be able to just pull that guy right out. So that's the first step. The other one is you're going to want to put some resistors on here, and you want the 100K ohm resistors, and you're going to want that. Let me see if I can get this guy up here so you can see it. You're going to want it on C7, C8, C9, C10, C11, and C12. So all of those, all the C numbers here, and you can see they're not all exactly next to one another. But what you're going to want to do is actually piggyback those. So if you have the surface mount ones, you can just literally put it right on top of that and just solder either side. Unfortunately, I don't have those because I couldn't find any. But at any rate, you just solder the contacts to either side and should be no problem. So once you get that done, then we're going to use, if I can find it here, we're going to use a 6-way rotary switch instead, and we'll hook that up, and then we'll be able to turn that. And I of course picked the knob on this one's got a little bit of blue on it, so it'll match the machine pretty well. So let's see if we can get this this remote IC out of here and get these resistors soldered on. Alright, so I thought I'd show you guys a close-up here of me putting in some of the resistors, just in case any of you guys are doing this for yourself. Now, as I said before, if you get the surface mount ones, you literally can just put them right on top here and just solder them into place. I've got some of these like this, the 100k ohm resistors come in a little pack like that. Now, what you're going to want to do, and I would say one of these sort of tweezer things that just holds everything in place is a must-have if you're doing any kind of soldering work, because then you don't have to really grip anything tightly. But anyway, you just sort of trim this down, and trim that down there, and just sort of bend it to where you see here, this can actually slide right in there. And I've already got just a little bit of solder on the tip of each side, so this should go in pretty nicely. And I apologize if this looks a little awkward, but I'm trying to reach through the tripod to do this, so this should be interesting. I'm not sure why I've got a big ball of solder on the end there. Okay, so I still have some solder on the end. So, alright, so we're going to put this guy in just like that. So we get it nice and in place. And then, for some reason, my hands are not steady at the moment. One side. And we get the other side. And there you have it. So once we get all these in, we should be ready for the next step. Alright, so now we've got everything installed in the machine, and for some reason the first slot is not sending the sound through, so I'm going to have to see what's wrong with that, but I only have 5 games in it right now. This is slot 2, and this is Espagaluda 2, and I'm going to show you, let's see, get a little light down in here. This isn't, the most ideal setup, especially with the STV board kind of on its side there, but I'll figure out a better way eventually. Just sort of something for right now, but you can see the boards and the switcher sitting in there, and I've got SkyShark on the side here just because it's a little bit easier to just put over there. So, and then on the top, you can see I've already got my buttons and ball tops and everything, and I've got a switch, rotary switch installed here, and with a blue top. It's not the nicest looking thing right now. I'm going to come up with a better solution for the mount. But anyway, I'll show you underneath here. And of course, since this is a 2-pole 6-switch switcher here, I don't know if you can see all that well in there, but the center pole, okay, I'm not sure if you can see this at all, but the center pole here is where you're going to hook it up to your 5-volt switch on the switcher, and then the rest of them, the 6 on that same side, are the ones that are going to be your different switches. The other side you don't use for this project. So anyway, we got the switch installed on the top. Again, we've got Espagaluda 2 on the 2nd slot. We can switch it over to the 3rd slot. Not sure why it seems to be kind of a line on there on the camera, but that's not visible on the actual game. I'm not sure what that is, but regardless, this is Gunbird. So you can see there. So that's in slot 3. In slot 4, you can see it's loading here. This one takes just a minute to load, and I probably should have showed you some of those things while this one was loading, because when it initializes here, this is the iCade 60-in-1, and it actually has to initialize all 60 games before starting up. So we'll just give it just a second here to load all the games up, and then that should be good to go. And I guess while it's doing its thing, you can see on these Arrow Cities there's kind of a hole here where you can send any kind of wiring you want through. And of course, once I got this finished, I used just some regular cable ties to kind of keep it from being too much of a mess. Let's see. Just gonna show you on here. No, I guess the remote's on the other side, so I guess I wasn't gonna show you that. Which is fine. This is actually finalizing here, so this should start up in just a second. And there you have the arcade with a really corny music here. Alright, so you can see that one's working fine. On the 5th slot here, we have Shanryu. And of course when it loads sideways. And that's just the standard for the STV, even for the vertical games, which there aren't really that many vertical STV games. So give that just a second. Again, I think it's just because of the refresh rate on the CRTs why you're getting that kind of diagonal line there. You can see we've got Shanryu, and that one's working just fine. Alright. And in our last slot here, looks like we've got the diagonal line kind of going crazy here. And this one is Sky Shark, the great Toaplan shooter. This one's really a classic. And for any of you guys out there thinking about getting an arcade machine with a vertical monitor, or if you already have one, this is a great game to add to your collection. And as far as PCBs go, this is one of the cheaper ones you can get. So you can get it for not a whole lot of money, and it's just a really fantastic game. So yeah, so that's it for right now. Got my games in, got the switcher hooked up, and again I'm going to try to come up with something a little bit better for our switcher knob here. Well, the knob itself I like because of the blue color on it, but I'm going to come up with something better for the mount, and then eventually I'm actually going to try to get rid of all this rust and whatnot. So I'll do a video on that when I do that. So thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and take care. Welcome back, guys. Now, I'm sure some of you realize I have a